Let's go ahead and start so we can be conscious and respectful of everyone's time. Hello, everybody. My name is Sophie Ziegler. I run events with Library Juice Connections, which is the events arm of both Library Juice Press and Library Juice Academy. I am so excited to be able to do this event today. We are here for Sorry, moving windows around. We are here for Coffee with Consultants with Robin Fay, Nisha Mahdi, and Jennifer Sweeney, all of whom will introduce themselves in just a moment. Before that, though, just a couple of words about Library Juice. So, there are a couple of arms to what we do. As many of you may know, we have Library Juice Academy, which is online professional development courses taught asynchronously through Moodle for all the things that we thought maybe we didn't need to know as we made our way through our library career, but then realized that we do need to know because the field is shifting and our jobs are shifting. We also do a lot of professional development for professional staff, as well as paraprofessional staff. We work with large organizations for bundled pricing. We have a lot of great stuff going on, a lot of new classes every single month. Take a look at libraryjuiceacademy.com. The other thing that we do is Library Juice Press, where we publish books and journals, I should say, on the critical angles of LIS writ large for all of us in the ecosystem. So take a look there. New books are coming out all the time. A lot of great events are coming out through there as well, which you can find through Library Juice Connections, and keep an eye out for us on all the socials. So you can find us on Blue Sky and Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places we like to hang out during the day. I'm going to pause here. Oh, let me say one more thing. Everybody attending will get an email after this goes out, just as a general thank you, with links to our newsletters. So should you want to follow along with all the things happening, the newsletters are a wonderful way to do that. Let me stop sharing this screen and step away for 1 second and allow our wonderful guests to introduce themselves. And then I'll be back to sort of walk us through some of our main questions. But we'll start with Jen. Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Start with me, who's all muted. Yeah, hi, I'm Jen Sweeney. I teach at San Jose State in the iSchool, a course on program evaluation research methods. I also have a consulting firm, Sweeney and Associates, an LLC, that I started back in 2011. My areas are mainly strategic planning, reorganization, small, medium-sized libraries, academic and public. My last assignment as a librarian was at UC Davis as a library analyst, and I was kind of an internal consultant, and I didn't know it at the time. But that drew me toward a PhD in library science and at UCLA, and then my connections there kind of led to consulting work, just sort of kind of by accident. And so I've been doing that ever since. At first I partnered with a more experienced consultant to get some initial work, but ever since then, it's just been going along. All right, that's all from me.
Hi, I'm Robin Fay. I am a metadata and data analyst and project manager, and I've worked on a lot of systems migration. I'm an instructor at Library Juice Academy in those areas. And I started out in higher education. So that was where my career started. I was very interested in the intersection of technology, the web, digital resources, and how we represent resources and make them findable in the library. And that was really kind of the start of my career and has been my interest really my whole career is how can I make things more findable for people? How can I, it's sort of we all use Google, but what would Google be like if librarians built it? It was even better. Like, how can we get to that? So that's kind of my thing. I started out as an accidental consultant as well. I was teaching and doing a lot of training and helping the university implement RDA, which was the new cataloging best practices and standards. And from there, I was contacted by a consulting company to help them with some instruction. And I kind of went all around the United States a little bit doing that as part of faculty outreach and helping the profession as a whole. I realized I loved it. When they stopped offering that because so many libraries had sort of implemented RDA at that point and they were going in a different direction, then I started kind of thinking about, what else might I like to do? And one of the clients actually said, "Hey, will you keep doing stuff for us?" And that's how I ended up being a consultant. I had a client before I had a business. So I love it, and I love getting to work with a lot of different libraries. Right now, I do a lot of federal agency consultants, and I've worked with some of the largest libraries in the world, some of the largest projects in the world, millions and millions of records and digital objects, and I just love it.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Nisha Modi. That was Vera, who is now done with me. Um,
As they are.
as they do. Really happy to be here today. I do a lot of facilitation for libraries around trauma-informed care and wellness and well-being in libraries. Um, I'm also a liberatory life coach, so I do coach people individually and in groups like outside of libraries. And I have also gotten individual clients from library workers who have been in my courses or in my workshops as well. I also have a self-paced course called Trauma Informed and Relational Care for Libraries that some institutions have bought, some individual people have bought with their professional development money. So most of my work has been coaching and workshops, as well as some like direct consulting, but mostly that's what it is. And I would actually love to do more direct coaching in libraries, which I'm just gonna be honest because I feel like this is a good place to put it out there. I
Mhm.
found less success with, but yeah, so that's something that I would love to do more on an organizational level. It's more so been that people have paid me out of their own pocket to join either my group coaching programs or long-term one-on-one. But yeah, I started, actually, it's funny, this is my sixth career, basically starting my business. I actually, ironically, started out of college as a consultant for Accenture, which is IT consulting. And I did more of the communication change management side. I just didn't like corporate, but ironically, I became an IT recruiter, which was still kind of corporate, but really liked helping people find jobs, which is actually the first place I learned Boolean search strategy before I even became a librarian, which is kind of funny because I had to go on like Monster. I don't even know if that exists anymore. And all these different job boards to find candidates for these IT jobs. But I really did actually hone some sales skills as an IT recruiter
Mhm.
at an agency, which I think has definitely helped me today, even though it was like life felt like a lifetime ago. Um, I left that job to become a speech therapist. So went back to school to become a speech language pathologist. My undergraduate degrees were in cognitive science and communication studies, and it felt like the right thing to do. And I liked it, but I also did it because of what was happening in my personal life. I was getting married. I thought I wanted kids, and so I just like to say that because I think personal impacts professional, and I think that's important
Mhm.
to name.
Yeah.
And then, but I always noticed that myself wanting to get deeper with people, wanting to get more
Mhm.
critical. And then I
Mhm.
got divorced, and I was like, I don't want kids, and I just like was realizing I wasn't satisfied with my job, and the career itself. And I actually discovered the CritLib community on Twitter,
Mhm.
people looking at information science and information literacy from a more
Mhm.
critical lens through marginalized perspectives, not looking at
Mhm.
libraries as like neutral. And
Mhm.
that got really exciting for me because I didn't see that as much in speech language pathology. It is happening now, which is
Mhm.
great,
Mhm.
but I didn't see it as much. So that's how I came into librarianship. And at this point, I also dabbled in voiceover work in between there. And decided that like I am a nerd at heart and I love to learn and get deeper. Not that voiceover work is great. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. Um, but yeah, and as a librarian, I did reference and instruction, and I was also a director for a year for the network of the National Library of Medicine, one of the
Mhm.
regions.
Mhm.
And I think what I noticed, and I always was more personally attuned to, was people's relational dynamics, as well
Mhm.
as just, I don't know, kind of like how are we all getting along or not, or what's happening?
Right.
Looking at things from like, how are people being managed? How are people like treating each other? And I just always found myself more interested in that. And I wasn't my primary responsibility, so I started doing coaching on the side, and I actually thought when I left libraries I was like done with libraries, but then I started teaching a course through We Here, in about trauma informed care in libraries, and that just like was right at the cusp of me leaving UCLA, and that just kind of blew up, and I started getting a lot of workshop requests, and that's what led me to create the course. So yeah, I'm doing a keynote next week for a library conference about it. So it's been kind of like a joint venture for me to do both of them. So that's how I got to do what I'm doing.
That's fantastic. Thank you all for this. And I know a lot of our participants and attendees here are very interested in consulting, right? Sort of what it is that consultants do, how it is that consultants start consulting. So to that end, I wonder, and we touched on this a little bit already, so maybe we could just do it very quickly if you have anything else to add, and if you don't, that's okay. But one of the questions that we were wondering about is what kind of projects and tasks do you engage in? So that type of like, what does a regular day look like for you, sort of thing. Like, what is it that y'all actually do as consultants? And Jen, if you don't mind, I'll start again over on your side.
No problem. Okay, so yeah, as I already mentioned, we touched on some of this. My main clients are small to medium-sized public and academic libraries. I do a lot of strategic planning. That's kind of a basic thing, long-range planning, facilities planning, that sort of thing, but also reorganization. Sometimes libraries realize, oh, especially tech services, we're still kind of in the 19th century here. And can you help us move into the future? So you do a lot of process analysis and a lot of talking to people. I do a lot of benchmarking with library statistics. I do a lot of trends analysis, looking at the statistics. We do surveys of users, of staff, we do just tons of talking to people, talking to everyone on earth, it feels like some days. Library staff, stakeholders, library boards, friends groups, the electeds, the mayor, the city council, the board of supervisors, whoever it is. We do SWOT analysis and all, strengths, weakness, opportunities, threat analysis, kind of business analysis for organizations, all the things that you think of as part of a strategic planning process or project I'm engaged in. So I think I'll stop there.
Well, and to key off what Jen said about communication and planning, so although my work is often more data centric, there is a lot of digging in data analysis. It is also about the planning, the documentation, the communication to all the key stakeholders, knowing who the decision makers are, keeping everybody informed and on track when you have a project. And I think the other piece of it then is the change management piece of it. And I know we've touched on this a little bit, but because I am often brought in for system migration work, it's not just the data that's migrating. It's everything that's touched by that data. And that means all the people, all the systems, where you click on the screen, what devices you may be using. You may end up having to have a new printer or something out of it. So it changes so much. So it is about looking at all of those pieces and then making sure that I always keep like a running tab or lots of post-it notes. I am a post-it note person. They're everywhere, lists everywhere, they're everywhere. And those are a way for me just to kind of take notes because I'm listening, as Jen noted, communication and the listening. I'm listening for things that people say that are going to be a flag to me or something I need to address. Oh, they don't have documentation for this, so this could impact data mapping decisions if there's no documentation about when they changed how they were doing their data. So that's the kind of thing I'm listening for, is what it's going to do to impact the actual project and trying to tease out those pieces that are important so I can kind of bring those to the surface, those discussions, to make the project go smoothly. So there's a lot of communication that happens on a day-to-day basis. For me, there's a lot of data analysis. Sometimes I'm writing statistical reports, I'm running reports, I'm making analysis, I'm making recommendations. And then the other parts of my day, what's left of it sometimes, meetings, communication, reports, all that stuff. And then the other part of it is whatever time I have left is that sales stuff, which I'm not very good at. But the outreach, following up on people who've contacted me, I get lots of contact and discussion through LinkedIn. So making sure I'm engaging with people, that I'm pushing out good content, and reminding people that, hey, I can come do this at your library.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Nisha?
Yeah, well, I figured maybe I'll just share like what today was like for me, and will be for me. I, got up, got ready, and I just checked some email, did some work, just managing like my email stuff. And then I actually facilitated a workshop. I provide workshops for my self-paced course. It's self-paced, but I have a live component. So I facilitated that workshop, which ended 30 minutes before this started, and now I'm doing this. After this, I'm going to be recording a video for my group coaching program called Meet Yourself. That is going to be for people to watch next week. So I'm going to write the script and record the video, and then I'm facilitating that this like early evening. So that's like what today is. That's a lot. This is a lot of like FaceTime for me today. I usually don't have this much. Like we're even doing two like kind of workshopy things doesn't usually happen for me. But other days it is like just like Mondays, I usually don't try not to schedule anything. That is my like figure out the week day. And also if I want to run errands or something like that, sometimes I do it just because I have that flexibility. But I will have meetings with, I will have also my coaching clients that I meet with, which I pretty much 100% most of the time meet virtually, unless we have like an all-day session, like a VIP day type of situation. Sometimes I'm doing professional development, honing in on my facilitation skills as well as my coaching skills. And a lot of what I do is marketing. And I would say market more for my coaching practice than the library stuff. I feel like library stuff tends to kind of come to me. But for my course, I do have to actively market for that more so. But I do, sometimes I'll have meetings with people who I'm going to be providing workshops for. So like I said, I do provide these workshops about trauma-informed care, wellness, and well-being in libraries. And I also really do it from like a systemic anti-oppressive lens. So I usually, when I meet with people, I will like have a consultation with anyone who is interested in that, look at what their needs are, who are they working with, why did they want to get in touch with me, like what is actively happening in the organization. So I can be sensitive to that and also make suggestions like, okay, well, maybe you should have, like, if we do this, we should have breakout groups for BIPOC only. So my facilitation skills are really important in the work that I do so that I can cultivate safety, which is a huge tenet of trauma-informed care, to cultivate safety. So yeah, and I'm also a writer and I'm writing a memoir right now. So that sometimes it becomes part of my day. And you might think like, okay, what does that have to do with your work? But a lot of clients have come to me because they've read my personal writing, my personal essays, and I've gotten clients from that. So it actually is a part of my marketing, whether it's kind of more indirect, but it has absolutely been helpful for me. I have a virtual assistant. I wanted to name that as well, who works for me like 10 to 15 hours a month. She schedules emails for me. She puts up like recordings and whatnot. Sometimes I'm maintaining like the back end tech stuff for my business, probably least on my website, but more so email marketing. I use Airtable for my day-to-day like management of like the people who are in my course, as well as my coaching programs. So yeah, it's just kind of like a mix of all that. And yeah, a lot of email writing, marketing, like that is something that does take a lot of time, but I've seen a lot of return, especially for my coaching practice. So I feel like that encompasses the most of what I do.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And maybe we'll stick with you for just a moment, and we can move through backwards this time just to change it up. I wonder. So you mentioned several things, including facilitation skills and marketing, and I wondered, Really quickly, we're sort of interested in what sort of knowledge and skills and abilities, both professional as well as personal characteristics, you think are necessary for the type of work that you do. Could you speak very briefly about that?
Sure. I really come into, like I said, trauma-informed care is very important to me. So I always think about what it means to cultivate safety for anything that I do, whether it's with my clients. So having those facilitation skills, for me, I have a lot of like, how do I ask questions? What are somatic like body practices that I incorporate? And I incorporate it in my course. I incorporate it in my workshops. How am I making sure that I'm embodying what I'm teaching too? So those are some really big skills. But I also, it's kind of like I see, it's a like kind of a Venn diagram of like, here's my coaching and facilitation skills, and then there's the business side.
Hmm.
And the business side, the business skills are one, realizing that not everyone's for me, and that's okay. And I think coming from libraries where we are trying to be in a way for everybody, that's been something to unlearn for me. Like, if you don't want to be my client, that's fine. If my facilitation or the type of work that I have in terms of trauma-informed care is not vibing with you, then let's not work together. And I think that that has been a really important skill for me to hone, because it's not just a skill of like what you do, it is actually like a nervous system, like not taking it
Hmm.
personally, understanding like who I am and what I'm doing. And one of the biggest skills I think I've had to hone too is like, what is my intention? If I'm
Hmm.
sending an email, if I'm talking to someone about,
Hmm.
a workshop I'm going to give, what is my intention? What am I trying to accomplish here? And
Hmm.
what do they think? What is their intention too? To make sure that
Hmm.
things are aligned. And that is, to me, that is a business skill, because
Hmm.
then you are actually honing in on something that is going to bring the outcomes that I want and the other person
Hmm.
is expecting too. So I think those are, I mean, there's so many skills, obviously. I personally have like someone doing my bookkeeping and my taxes. Like I do not want to do that stuff. So I
Hmm.
have someone doing that for me.
Yeah.
Saves me a lot of time, and I'm, yeah, just really happy to do that. So yeah, I really think about like, yeah, but there is overlap there, right? Like I do think even
Hmm.
when I coach my clients, I'm just like, I talk a lot about people pleasing, and I'm like, well, is everyone for you? Are you trying to make sure everyone likes you? And my business has actually been like a really beautiful container for me to uncover my own stuff
Hmm.
so that I can actually be a better coach and facilitator. And I think that's something we don't talk about a lot, is
Hmm.
how business skills can actually be supportive to whatever else you're doing, and
Hmm.
how you're facilitating, interacting, especially with library work, that
Hmm.
I think can be library workers and organizations that, like I said, want to be like everything all the time. Like, how can we narrow in the focus? How can we be strategic? And what kind of culture is supporting that?
Hmm.
So yeah, I've said quite a few things, so I'll stop there.
And I think that that piece of it, there were a couple of things I wrote down there that I wanted to talk about because I think they're so important. But one is the how, and this goes for project management skills as well. So in 2020, I did a 50K. I came to running kind of late and slowly. That's a long way. It's over 31 miles. It was out in the Everglades. It was a lot of planning, and I have told many people this. It changed the way I looked at my work because I had to project plan that. This was years out in the making. It wasn't something that I signed up for and I did it the next day. There was no last minute, you can do this on a on a chance kind of thing. And that really did teach me to use the project management tools that I know to apply those to things in my own life. And one of the things that of course, that happens when you're doing all these training runs is you have things that just don't go very well. Sometimes the run just doesn't go well. Your food's not right, whatever. You didn't get enough to drink, you're dehydrated, whatever it is. And you have to then kind of recalibrate, or maybe you get injured and you have to recalibrate. And that's something that I think is a skill that I think consultants sort of we have to learn it at some point because we will have a client who approaches us, or maybe we are referred to a client and they're not a good match for us. Maybe their expectations are out of scope. Maybe they want 40 hours worth of work for 5 hours worth of funding. It could be any kind of thing. Just you know, what they, or maybe their needs aren't truly communicated. And so it sounds like you're a good fit, but then when you start unpacking their needs, you discover that they need maybe a data analysis or they need strategic planning. They're not ready for data migration yet because they got a whole bunch of other work they got to do before they get to it. They don't even know what system they're going to get. So, you know, I think there's a lot of things that we learn in consulting if we don't already have those skills, and being able to apply those and kind of approaching it from a business standpoint and also thinking carefully about the clients is really important. I think the other part of it is for me, because I have worked on so many projects in addition to working on long projects and much shorter projects, and I do instruction with Library Juice Academy, is sort of when closing the book, like how I close the book between projects is really important. I write some notes to myself. I always do a project wrap up, no matter how big or small, kind of this was what went well, this is what didn't. That's really helpful for me too, because it can help me see where I need to have some, you know, additional, maybe I need to look at something in terms of, could I be better at this or do something better? The other thing I've learned from working on some really big projects as an outside consultant is being very aware to provide guidance and support that meets the needs of the organization and not to overstep my bounds too much. You know, if they need to be the key decision makers, I'm going to encourage them and support them through the process, but they need to get to that decision themselves. I mean, I can certainly provide guidance and suggestions and things like that, but helping them do their part of the project as well. And I think that's a really tricky thing as a consultant, you know, kind of coming into it, regardless if you're doing a strategic plan or you're doing a system migration, is to provide that and to deal with the change management and a lot of different personalities and being enthusiastic and supportive throughout whatever process or situation they're going through, or whatever emotion is needed that's appropriate for that particular situation, you know, to kind of make sure that there is some resolution and forward progress. So I think there's so much we're learning for me, because so much of my work in the last year has been intersecting with AI, and there's so many issues associated with AI, and a push by leadership to start embracing and using AI at many of the places I've been working with, that I think the other piece of it is, you know, I can't right now learn, there is no limit to how much I need to learn about AI in order to be able to better facilitate and to be able to address some of the questions and issues, and to be able to help the institutions plan strategically and not just run to AI when there's a better solution out there. So to be able to be very mindful in terms of how we're using an emerging experimental technology in this work. So there's a lot going on right now, and I'm sure each one of us has our own pockets of what we are actively engaged in learning in. But right now for me, it's definitely AI is a huge part of that.
Great, thanks, Robin. Wow. Um, I'm glad I'm not doing the tech thing.
It's AI all day, every day.
Run away, run away. I agree completely with what Nisha and Robin have talked about, and I jotted down a couple of things. One is, you know, you can learn facilitation. You know, good facilitation is not innate, I don't think. I think actually very few of us are born with it. So get some training. I put a link in the chat there. Personally, I did the technology of participation, which is really a fascinating process. So there's lots of them out there. Find one that sounds good. It's not cheap, but I think it's really a worthwhile investment to be able to say to your client, yes, I use this method and I have this training, and you have a process, and that's going to be part of your marketing. It's the fact that you have a process. So that's a knowledge and skill that you need to develop.
Sure.
I agree completely. You need to be a good listener. You really need to take good notes. There's always going to be an unspoken agenda underneath the surface. They say they want this, but really this other thing going on. Oh goodness. So you've got to be able to, you know, empathize, express that empathy, develop that trusting relationship. And yeah, there are times where you and the client are not a good fit, and you either have to remove yourself and,
Mhm.
do something different, or
Mhm.
change the way you are operating.
Yep.
One of those things. You got to be really organized. I am swimming in data most of the time.
Mhm.
So you've got to be really self-motivated to dig in there and get the tasks done, stay on track, keep an eye on the calendar. You got to
Mhm.
communicate what you're finding with the client,
Yep.
and make sure that they understand what you're saying. You
Yep.
know, we use a language, or maybe we think we're being perfectly clear. And then you have this other conversation and you find out they really didn't hear that at all.
Yep.
So the ability to have that kind of conversation where you can draw out what your client knows, that you, whether they are understanding what you're trying to get across to them. Be prepared. Don't show up to a meeting unprepared. That's
Yep.
really not okay. And coaching.
Mhm.
You will find whatever the project is, whatever the client is, and Nisha, you do a lot of this.
Yep.
I do maybe a different kind. Um, there are going to be folks in the organization who are ready to learn that next skill or something that they need to progress
Mhm.
in their career. And so I honestly can say I have never had a client organization that didn't have some folks who needed that kind of one-on-one coaching,
Yeah.
to the extent that it's in your lane, that it's part
Mhm.
of what you're
Yep.
doing, because you're there to help them, right?
Mhm.
Solve a problem, do something,
Mhm.
and oftentimes helping to guide the staff is very much part of that. That's all from me.
Thank you all so much for that. I wonder, this is just a little bit different, but we're thinking about the skills necessary. I wonder next if we could think about sort of taking a step back and talking about the typical steps of a consulting project. So again, I know that there's going to be a lot to say, and every project's a little bit different. But just, if you could
Mhm.
just sort of give us the idea of like how you go from marketing and proposal writing to kickoff me, and all the way to wrapping that up. And anything that you have to say for this. And Robin, I think this time we'll start with you if you don't mind.
So when people contact me, I'm gonna first, usually they'll just say like, hey, can you do some training or can you do some workshop or we need help with, and they give me a little bit of information. So I will first either have a discussion with them. It can be Zoom chat, whatever platform they want. I can use any of them. And what I am listening for is to get a sense of what their needs are and talking about those unspoken needs or uncommunicated needs, because they see that there's an issue or something they want to work on, or they know they need a new system. But what? What comes next? Like, how does it happen? And so one of the things I do is I am listening very carefully to hear their concerns and their questions and where they're at and whatever they're working on. And then I'm also going to be, so I'm going to be listening for those in between things so I can get a sense of like what their data is like and what their staffing's like, what resources they may have, what issues they have, is leadership on board, all of those things that they may not be telling me directly, but that are so important. And I'm going to ask some questions as we go along. So it's going to be very much a communication. Then I will tell them a little bit about myself if they don't know much about me. And I will then kind of tell them how my project will go. I will take some of the information. Maybe I'm going to do a survey or have another listening session with a larger group, or if they have a project proposal already, I'll review that. So I will take whatever they have and I will come up with my own project proposal, or if they have a format, I will follow that and we'll just kind of work from there. So I will provide them with some additional information, provide them with a needs assessment based upon what I'm hearing, and we can even expand from that. But to kind of get a sense of then how the project needs to go, if it's a project or if it's going to be something that's maybe more long term. And that will kind of give them a sense of something they can have as a takeaway to discuss amongst themselves, so that, and I give them my resume so they can see all the things I've done and some example work to look at and all that kind of stuff. So they have a sense of like what my project materials will look like to them. So we talk a little bit about that, and then I will kind of talk about what steps I'll do in a proposal. So I will put together that proposal. It covers all the aspects, including a basic timeline. And of course, it's all pending their feedback and what they approve and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really meant as a discussion point for me, the project proposal, unless they're just going to agree to it out of the box and say, yes, great. The project proposal is meant to say, this is what the project's going to look like. Here's the areas we're going to cover. Here's the things that we need to address in this project, the steps. If it's a data migration, I'm going to talk about that, talk about the change management, the workflows, all that stuff. And then I'll talk about how the project will run, that we'll have a project team. I'll be working with the project team. We'll meet regularly. There'll be a communication plan, the whole thing. So I'll kind of have it all laid out for them so that they have sort of a starting point for a discussion for how this will go. And then we kind of go from there. If it's a workshop, it's going to be more getting a sense of where their audience and their participants are, what they actually need. I don't want to just give them a generic out of the box, like how to create metadata. I mean, if you want that, that's fine. But if you have something specific you want to talk about, let me make it more tailored to what they want. So getting a real sense of their needs. So even if they're not expressing a need to me, I'm listening in that first meeting and those first communications to really get to define what their needs are, so that when I present materials back to them, it's going to be like, oh yeah, she gets us. That's what I want them to hear is, oh, she gets us. And then we can, negotiate the rest of them. And part of that's kind of a marketing thing too, right? I'm saying like, hey, look how awesome I am. I get you all. Like, here's what I know. So kind of figuring out that part of it. So it's really about that initial proposal piece of it, the needs assessment piece of it, and then to go from there and to make sure that every part of the project is then wrapped up as it needs to be. So it's really clear to them what the stages of the project will be and what I'm going to do, what my deliverables are going to be back to them. That's me. It's very technology oriented, I think, in that way.
For sure, for sure. Jen, do you mind if I bounce it over to you?
Oh, no, not at all. And we're on the typical steps. And so, Robin, I thought you covered the getting started part really well. I thought I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of the kickoff meeting, your very initial time that you're together. Maybe you've had phone calls, you've written your proposal. If there was an RFP, a request for proposal coming from a municipality or an organization, you want to be sure that your proposal touches on everything in that RFP, and it won't be as easy as it sounds, because there will be like weird things in there. You're like, what are you doing? Anyway, the kickoff meeting is really important, and I'm talking about this because you need to have very specific goals for this meeting. You set the agenda as the consultant. You want to make sure that the key people are in the room who are going to be working on the project with you from the organization are in the room. To the extent you can do this in person, that's really preferable. I mean, we did a lot of work virtually over COVID, but it's really much better if you're in the room and you can have that kind of get to know you time. And the reason I wanted to focus on the kickoff meeting is that I was recently involved in a project where I was not the lead consultant. I was one of a team. And the kickoff meeting did not go very well.
Oh, no.
I just thought, oh man, you really want to establish, know what you want to accomplish at this meeting, and keep an eye on the clock and stay on track. One thing you want to accomplish is you want to agree on who the contact person is going to be. You're not going to be communicating with all 10 or 40 or whoever they want to have in the room. You want one person. You want to agree on the schedule. You want to agree on the tasks. You want to have detailed conversation about exactly what we need to accomplish on task 1, task 2, task 3. You want to make sure they understand what their time commitment is going to be. A lot of times clients don't realize, oh, I'm going to have to pull all this data. I'm going to have to do this or that or the other thing. So you want to make sure that's really clear, and to be able to have those people that you're going to have to work with in the room. And you can have a side conversation later, but in the room, you want to identify them and make sure that you're getting a nod and some eye contact across the table, so that you feel like you're on the same page. You're going to document all of this in a memo. All your meetings, you're going to document
Yep.
the agenda, take good notes, and you're going to send that right back to the client. So that's the kickoff meeting. You know, at your exit meeting, that's usually when you're presenting your final report, usually, or maybe a draft or your findings. Hopefully, you've sent that to them ahead of time so that they know that you're kind of done, and hopefully they've read it and could give you some feedback in person. That would be great. You're going to be sure to thank them for all their hard work. See, I'm from a very participatory, that's my approach. You know, we're working together, and I expect a lot from my clients. So you want to be sure that you're thanking them because they really did work hard, and this is their project. Pay attention to the format that they need things in, what's going to be useful for them, and absolutely be sure, especially with public organizations, that you have ticked off every box on that RFP. Because the last thing you want at your final meeting is for someone to say, oh, what about this task 8.5B? We never heard anything about that. And it's like, don't do that. Okay, that's all from me.
Yeah, I'll just add a little more. I think you both covered so much in terms of, meeting with them, writing a proposal, doing the thing. And for me, it's, I think, way less involved for them, both of you, because I'll do the workshop and then probably have an assessment. One thing I did want to mention is, like, for marketing purposes, I do sometimes gather testimonials, and I always ask for consent, like on the feedback, like, oh, can you give me a testimonial? How do you want me to be named? Do you want it to be anonymous, full name, whatever? So that is something that I like to do just for the future, and just look at the assessment to get feedback for myself about what I need to improve. So I'll be honest, I think that's all. You guys covered, like, the rest of the process so well, but I will also add that since I have created my own courses and whatnot, that's a different type of project process, like in terms of creating a curriculum, what platform are you going to use it, how is that connected to payment. Payment systems are going to be a really big deal. Like, what payment system are you going to use? How is it connected to the platform you're going to be using? Like, what connections are you going to make so that different integrations are possible? So from a technical side, that is going to be really important, because that can be mind numbing and so frustrating when that stuff doesn't integrate very well. So, I think this is kind of like probably going into the next question, but yeah. So, I mean, I can just start with the next question if you want, but, like, basically, I think that stuff is really important, because it is part of your process in terms of how you go through a consulting project in terms of your side. And I was also going to mention, having a good note-taking system. I'm getting better at that. I've shifted in different ways. So I know Jen mentioned that as well. But yeah, if you're creating a course, then marketing is going to be a part of that process. So really thinking how you're integrating marketing, like, or even like, hey, I'm creating this course. Like, how are you announcing it? What is the journey that you're taking the person on to sell something? And I always like to come from a values-based place. Like, this is why this matters. Can I just kind of start answering the next question? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's absolutely fine. Let me
Sure.
just introduce the question,
Yeah, go ahead.
just to be sure that everybody knows. And what we are going to slide into is, what advice do you have for anyone looking to start a consulting business? And thank you for starting that, and we'll just go right into it.
Yeah, definitely. So, definitely know your values. Like, what are your values in your business, and why do they matter, and how do you want to implement them? How are they implemented in every stage of the process? I do think creating marketing doesn't have to be always starting an email list right away. I do have an email list that is very strategic and very important for my business. And it can just be like, how am I getting in touch with people to start? Who are the people I know? How am I being relational? I think relationality is, like, the best thing. So what relationships do I have? How can I talk to them? You know, what's the demand? You know, this year has been hard because of a lot of like cuts in funding and everything like that. So that's just something to be very realistic about. And like, how are you going to shift your strategy? One thing I noticed with my course this year was that in this year's iteration, I had less organizations buy it, but more individuals use their professional development money or even out of their own pocket to pay. So that's something that I'm like, okay, now that I know that there's harder times, and I made more money than I thought it would actually because of everything this year. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. Also, just like taking risks, you're gonna have to take some risks, and I think that that's a really important thing to do when you're starting your business, to know that and to know how much risk you're willing to take and how safe you feel to take it. You know, like I personally, I don't have like I have a partner, but I'm not like married. Like it is kind of just me. So I made sure before I left my job, like I had enough in savings, like just from a very practical standpoint. And I was also doing like the consulting coaching before I left to know, one, do I like this? Do I want to
Yeah.
do this? Am I seeing enough movement to see that this will work? And do I feel safe enough to leave? Especially since I don't have, you know, I have to pay insurance out of pocket, like all these things I have to do. I had to think very strategically. And I also didn't realize that I would need to make more money than I did in my library job because of all the
Yeah.
systems and everything I have to pay for.
Yep.
I realized that later, but you know, just keep that in mind. And you can't just calculate if you're making, I'm just for a number's sake, $100,000, $80,000, $150,000, whatever you're making, that's exactly where you're going to need. I mean, it depends where you live and everything, but like you are probably going to have more expenses that while you can write them off, it's still money you're spending. So that's just something to keep in mind. And yeah, those were the biggest ones I wanted to share in terms of starting off. Like sometimes you're just gonna have to throw the spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks, and then you can definitely get strategic. And the last thing I'm gonna say is once you start getting more strategic, when you throw spaghetti on the wall, is really look at the data. You know, like okay, I sent these emails. Like how do these emails do? I have a freebie like for my marketing to get people on my email list, and I also make it very specific and ingrained in my values. So if someone isn't into it, then they're not signing up. So that's just like not a waste of anybody's time. And a lot of it, like I said, is like learning to not take things personally. And for me, that's also like thinking about how am I taking care of myself? Like how am I tending to my nervous system to not like completely freak out? And okay, this is really the last thing is just because one thing didn't work once doesn't mean you should give up on it.
Yep.
Like look at the information, look at the data, think about why didn't this work? Talk to other people. Talk to other people who are doing this with you. That's why you're here to see like, you know, what else do you suggest? What are some other creative things I do? What am I missing? Because there's probably something missing. Like I said, this year I learned that, hey, even though organizations are buying my course less, individual people were willing to. So now next year, I don't know how much the situation is going to change the United States.
Yeah.
What am I going to do now to really actually focus on that? Like I could do some things differently. I can do some, you know, Q&As. Like, you know, I could do lots of different things, you know, to focus on that. So I'll stop there.
And I think that gets to the adaptability and being flexible, which is so important to consulting. One of the things that I had to learn early on was one, what I made in my other career when I was a librarian is not the same thing I need to pay health insurance and all the other stuff that I have to pay for myself. So I think that is an important part of it. It took me I was kind of out on my own and still trying to figure that part of it out because I really hadn't had, you know, I didn't really have any formal business training or anything like that. I kind of ended up an accidental consultant. So I kind of had someone kind of mentored me in that way and was like, you know, you need to sit down, look at your bills, look at what you need, include health insurance, include a 401k, at least something, and then figure out like, what do you need? And then work back from that to figure out, okay, what do I need to make? And I thought like, wow, that's such a logical, easy way to kind of figure it out. And that's what I did. And that was very helpful. The other thing for me, and I think we're a little bit alike in this, is that because I do to develop a lot of instructional content and I create a lot of content as part like templates and workflow diagrams and things like that that are very proprietary to me. These are things based on my analysis and my years of knowledge that I am very mindful of what I can release publicly and what I want to share with people as examples of my work versus what I need to keep, especially for instructional content. Because I've taken all the years of doing this work and distilled it into like cheat sheets and templates and all this wonderful stuff to help people do this work that really, I say for my Library Juice Academy Dewey class, not to toot its horn too much, but it's the missing manual. It's what should be taught with everybody who knows Dewey. So, it's very carefully crafted. And so I am very mindful of making sure that I am, when I'm writing contracts for consulting, that I am including provisions for how my work can be reused, licensed, and republished. And not only, do I adhere to those things in terms of how long it's embargoed before I feel comfortable releasing it as public works, because I want to contribute back to the profession as the whole. But if I'm constantly spending hours creating new cheat sheets and then I release them out for free to everyone, I have to find some way to recapture that time I'm investing in creating all of this content. So I think for content creator people who are in this field, it's a little bit different too. The other thing I did not understand as much that I wished I knew more about was the testimonials and getting testimonials from people. Those are so important. I have always been a person who, when I was on committee, I would write letters thanking my committee members for their work and thanking people, because if you work in a tenure track position as a librarian, as I have, you need all that thank you notes and all those documentations of all the work you did. So I just have extended that as a consultant, but people don't always think to thank us for the work that we do when we do these amazing things for them. And a lot of times it is amazing things. The other thing I will finally add, just to kind of wrap up, is I very much agree on the return on investment. Focus on where you're adding value and how whatever you are bringing is bringing value to that particular project, institution, how it matches up with strategic goals, how it's addressing an issue, where it's solving a problem. Focus on that. That will also help with the change management, because you are helping to drive forward that future vision. And the hardest lesson I learned is don't rely on other people to take notes in meetings. They may not take notes. They may take notes that you're like, what did they write? And if you can record meetings, if people are okay with that, then you can have everybody watch the meeting at their own time if they can't attend the meeting, and you've got a transcript to go back to. It's a collaboration, and they have to be willing to put something into it. It's not just us doing all the work. Even if we are writing the plans and we are doing the bulk of the work, we still need their insights, their decisions, their guidance in terms of getting it all done. And that's me.
Okay, thanks, Robin. I agree with all of this. And the notes I jotted down for this was just kind of some nuts and bolts things. I mean, you
Yeah.
want to think about whether you need and want to have a formal business structure, whether
Yeah.
you're going to register yourself as an LLC or something else. So you might want to get some guidance on that. I think Small Business Administration has some good resources, and I think we've got some of that in our resource list that we're going to
Yeah.
post in the chat area in a minute.
Yeah.
Make sure you're gonna have a separate bank account. You're gonna pick some kind of accounting software, or as Nisha so very wisely does, have an expert actually do that for you. I kind of wish I had done that, but honestly, it seemed simple enough to me. So I just use QuickBooks. Think about insurance as my colleagues here have talked about, but also liability insurance.
Yep.
A lot of municipalities and other agencies require a consultant to have some kind of liability insurance. If you have employees, you've got to jump through a lot more hoops, workers' comp and that sort of thing. So keep an eye out for that. I found most of us kind of small, one man army consultants, we tend to hire each other as kind of subcontractors.
Right.
So you don't have to have formal employees. And so we can get around the workers' comp thing that way. Yeah, that's just those kinds of nuts and bolts things. I thought your idea of thinking about what financial commitment you,
Hmm.
what are those goals that you have to meet and working backwards from that to kind of figure out what your workload is really going to look like,
Hmm.
how you're going to price your services and your
Right.
products. I caution, don't get overcommitted. There
Yeah.
are only so many hours in your life. And it is easy to commit to too much and to take on too much. And then you're not in a good way. And
Yeah.
it's not healthy and it's
Yeah.
not the best service for your client or for yourself. Okay, so that's all from me on starting the business.
So I see a question from Elizabeth about how the budget cuts and the funding situation has impacted. And I started answering, but I can go ahead and answer because I have been doing primarily, in addition to Library Juice Academy, I have been doing a lot of federal agency consulting. And I cannot count how many projects I have been on that have pivoted, disappeared, including one today. They just vanish. Sometimes I go through the security credentialing process and then I find out the project's gone. So, yes, the answer is yes. It's impacting consultants because for those of us who do consulting in federal spaces, and with even state institutions, we are impacted by these budget cuts and by the IMLS cuts as well. Um, it is about being as flexible as we can. So I think that for me, if something doesn't work out, to then figure out, okay, that I just shut the door on it. So not getting overly attached when something doesn't work out in terms of the funding. I've written some amazing project proposals that went nowhere because of a lack of, because funding just dried up. So, that just happens. And right now, that's what happens. This is not how it was when I got started with consulting, but this is the reality right now. And I think the other part of it is that to always keep a good relationship with any of those potential clients who maybe you were doing some initial work with you and they came back and they said, oh, we're so sorry. We've had to lay off 10 people and we just can't do this project right now. Be kind to them. They're going through a lot. And also just kind of keep the door open. And that actually happened with me with some IMLS grant funding where I had some clients come back to me just recently and say, can you just do a couple of workshops for us before the end of the fiscal year? So, if you keep those good relationships going, you can sometimes, have a smaller perk from it, but it is about pivoting. And I do have a lot of concerns about it kind of going forward. So, and I think also for, I think Nisha mentioned this too in terms of her students. I see this with Library Juice Academy students too. I see a lot of students who are self-funding their own professional development. And especially when you talk about how many staff are leaving agencies or retiring early or being reduced in force, people are looking to pivot their careers. So we're seeing a lot of needs, I think, for instruction as well. So there's some opportunities there. It's just that things are definitely in flux still, I think. So that's my experience, but yes, definitely impacted.
I just think we just have a moment or two left, but I wonder, there was this question in the Q&A about the metrics or KPIs to keep track of and to show evidence of the impact of the client. And Nisha, both you and Jen typed a response there, but I wonder if y'all could just say it out loud just to be sure that everybody hears it and to be sure that we have it on the recording.
Yeah.
I can read the question if you'd
Oh
like.
yeah, go ahead, read it.
Okay, so it says, thank you for your valuable insights. What are some metrics or KPIs that we need to keep tracking of to show evidence of our impact to clients and where we create value? And what software apps did you use to keep track of these stats, et cetera? Or dashboard do you use?
Yeah, I was just saying, since my work is more qualitative, I usually kind of stick to those testimonials, but I have started to send onboarding and offboarding forms for my course,
Mhm.
as well as for like my clients, like my group coaching programs, I have like the same questions and I see how their progress on like an agree to disagree. I also I ask for consent in my group programs. Like if someone is typing stuff in the chat, or like I had a client just email me saying she can't come to my thing tonight, but that it has unlocked her so much for her within 2 sessions. So I was like, hey, can I use this? So I just keep like a running like tab of that stuff in a Google document, like, and I have like just different like sections for like one-on-ones, like group coaching, short term. I'm using Airtable a lot. That's kind of like a new thing last year, but it's like really robust and helpful I actually joined a program to figure it out, which for me was a good investment. But that's what I have done. But like I said, I have less like hard numbers. So yeah.
Yeah, same here. It's kind of hard to quantify strategic planning and reorganization. From time to time, I do like to follow up with clients and say, hey, how's it going? I don't always get a response, a
No.
lot of times, unless they have another question or something that they want to follow up on, it's not, I'm not on their radar after you walk out the door and you've done the work for them. So I guess, in terms of metrics, what's important to me is just to keep tabs on, how many people did we really reach with this type of survey invitation approach? How did we do getting people in the room for that workshop? We tried this, we tried that, we tried the other thing. Did that really work in this community, and why? And I spend some time thinking about that, because that's going to be something that I'm going to learn from and use in the future. So I guess I'm thinking more in terms of, how are the things that I am doing, how effective are they in getting these project tasks done effectively? So
And
go
in
ahead.
my project wrap up, I usually include, like, at least if they're, if I don't list them as a bulleted list, I will kind of list them as more of a, sort of a summary. And then I write how the work that I did has met or facilitated or exceeded those particular, goals that we had in mind. And then talk about how the work that I've done is setting it up for the future and aligning with any strategic goals or reorganization plans or whatever is going to be the end result. So I do sort of talk about that. The other thing I talk about is I do look at combining the testimonials, and then also I have course evaluations for everything, so I can look at those and kind of address, like, 95% of my students think this was a great class, or, I can look at that and just what I need to do. In terms of, am I asking too much for a 4-week class, or am I asking about the right amount? And, is the work sufficient for them? So I use whatever metrics are available, and I just use a Google spreadsheet. So, nothing fancy for me in terms of this. But just to get a sense of kind of how I'm doing, but also to be able to communicate back success.
Fantastic. Well, thank all three of you very, very, very much. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to do it. Thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time to come and hear us. We will have this recording up on our YouTube channel, and we'll send an email out to all the attendees to let y'all know that it's there when it's ready. And that's it. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Thank you again.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Sophie. Great work.
Yes.